joined by people as we speak. So I'm going to remind the participants who are panelists that feel free to, when you're not speaking, mute your audio, and if you turn your camera off, that will focus attendees on the speaking party. But and for those of you joining us and for everyone involved, we are recording this for posterity and are going to make it available on the Bureau website. We will also be sharing the presentations on our website, so please don't feel a desperate need to write everything down. We are going to make sure that stuff's available. Thanks very much to our panelists for making it available. So we're just going to give people a little bit of time to log in and join us. And we're expecting a wide range of participants from stakeholders within and outside Worcester, including legislative staffers, community-based organizations, municipal employees, school department employees, a whole host of stakeholders, including private sector experts. So we are being joined by a few members of the media, just so people know. And what I would ask is, if you have questions, please put it in the Q&A. We will be getting to a moderated Q&A session. I will freely say to everyone that I'm going to do the best I can to try to moderate the discussion and pull questions most appropriate for our panelists. It does not mean, however, I'm going to be able to get to every question, nor does it mean that every question can really be answered by them. So we'll do the best we can to move through the discussion, and please do put your questions in the Q&A along with your identity. That would be very helpful. And we'll get to that at the end of our formal program today. So I know we're up to about 40 people, and that's a pretty sizable portion of those who registered. So I think what I might do is get underway with a few welcoming remarks. For those of you who do not know, my name is Paul Matthews, as my screen hopefully shows. I'm the Executive Director and CEO of the Worcester Regional Research Bureau. I am attempting to pinch hit today for our chairman, Fran Madigan, who is traveling and was unexpectedly held up. But just to say thank you to Fran and the Board of Directors for the Bureau. We're very fortunate to have over 100 members of the region's leadership from business, philanthropy, higher ed, other key institutions on our leadership. And they provide support, leadership, ideas, and funding support to the Bureau over the course of the year. So we're very proud today to convene this conversation on broadband access and digital equity. For those of you following the Bureau's work throughout and post-pandemic, it's an issue that we chose to make a priority. Our executive committee realized the pressing need given the pandemic. So we've actually provided 2 objective reports on this topic. When the pandemic fully hit in 2020, we issued the Broadening Broadband report, and then we returned to the issue earlier this year to share updated insights on broadband access in Worcester, as well as responses on a local, state, and federal level through our Boosting Broadband report. So our work on this issue has continued, and there's much to share with you today on developments on broadband access. I would be remiss if I did not thank everyone involved in the donors of the Worcester Together Fund, who offered a catalyst grant to us to enable the Bureau to continue our work, and that made it possible. In terms of today's program, we are going to be hearing from 2 statewide experts on broadband and digital access. The first is Ashley Stolba from the Executive Office of Housing and Economic Development, the Undersecretary of Community Development. The other is the Director and General Counsel, Michael Baldino, from the Massachusetts Broadband Institute. I know we're all looking forward to hearing how the state's ongoing responses will help address the needs here in Worcester, so I want to thank them for sharing their insights. Just to recap a few housekeeping points I raised earlier, we're going to have a Q&A session at the end. So as you have questions, please do fill them in the Q&A session, and please do note who you are. I will be moderating that discussion, so due apologies to everyone. I'm going to try to move through those questions that are appropriate for our panelists. I'm not going to guarantee that we're going to get to every question, nor do I guarantee that I'm going to read every word of every question, but I will try to hit the key points raised in the Q&A. For our panelists, they are going to be joining us shortly, and there is a recording being done today, but their presentation will be shared after this, as will this recording. So don't worry, that will be available. On that note, I'm happy to shift to the beginning of the content and share a brief overview of the Bureau's work on this and what is happening in the city of Worcester. So to start, today we're hearing about this issue due to the importance. So the importance has been recognized by people on the state level, and the governor, lieutenant governor, House, Senate have all made this a priority, as have leadership here in the city of Worcester. So our city administration, our school department have all made this a priority through the pandemic. I want to particularly commend former city manager Ed Augustus, Mayor Joe Petty, current acting city manager Eric Batista, who worked on this issue in his previous role. And we're being joined today by the city's CIO as well, Michael Hamill. Now, why is this issue so important? Because digital equity affects not only remote work, but also remote schooling, civic engagement, telehealth, and even worship services. I mean, so this really is a long-term need for the community, economically, socially, educationally, but most of all, competitively as we move forward. As I mentioned, the Bureau is a 501c3 nonprofit. We serve the public interest of Greater Worcester by conducting independent, nonpartisan research and analysis of public policy issues and promote informed public debate and decision making. So you can see here we have an extensive leadership representing some of the top individuals in the community, as well as our executive committee and our board of directors. Now, we're very unusual in that most cities our size do not have a research bureau. However, our leaders had great foresight and 37 years ago established the bureau to provide this direction. So I want to thank everyone involved. Now, in terms of the resources you're going to hear about today, there's two primary components. One is, as is usual, a typical report that the Bureau has put out. It's quite extensive. It has a number of data components. We also, however, put out an online visualization. So please do check out both resources, and it's part of our ongoing commitment to incorporating, whenever possible, online interactive visualizations to allow the community to directly access the data as well as our analysis. Now, since we issued the broadening broadband report, there's been considerable progress and considerable developments. The Worcester Public Schools were remote for an entire year from 2020 to 2021. The City Council's subcommittee requested a task force as called for in our report. The School Committee, Standing Committee on Student and School Performance, requested the city develop a municipal broadband cost estimate and work with our legislative delegations. As called for, our city manager created a municipal broadband task force and set aside ARPA funds. And the federal funding that's coming via ARPA and the Federal Infrastructure Act is flowing into the Commonwealth and into our local municipal government as well as our school system. Now, all of these are paralleled by growing state responses by the Baker-Polito administration and the legislature. But the importance of our broadband network cannot be overstated. The most notable illustration is the first day of school in 2021, January 4th. There was a significant outage, and it literally shut down the remote learning for Worcester Public Schools. So what can be done to improve broadband in Worcester? There is a wide range of private existing fiber infrastructure, and it was noted by a 2015 Chamber report. It's so-called dark fiber. So Crown Castle network is shown here. We do provide additional details in our report. There are other communities that have embarked upon public-private partnerships with third parties like Sci-Fi or Entry Point Networks. However, most notably, I want to thank Verizon for making a significant investment in the city of Worcester, and they are actively finishing the first phase of their multi-year plan to install a citywide fiber network to be used for broadband and voice services. So it's important to note that's not an entry into the cable market. It's not. However, it is going to provide a huge alternative for the city of Worcester, and they should be thanked for making that level of private sector investment. Now, in terms of our current broadband infrastructure, our report covers a great deal of technical data on this. I will not belabor it. That's not why we're here today. But this points out average speed in Worcester varies, particularly the difference between upload and download speed. Now, before the pandemic, I think most people thought about download speeds as being paramount to download video, audio files, and other sizable files. With video conferencing like Zoom, it frankly depends on our upload speed as well. So this is absolutely critical. And I do urge anyone interested to consult our report and the online visualization. But how has broadband access changed in the city? So this shows progress from 2017 to 2019. You can see considerable progress. In 2017, almost 25% of Worcester households did not have a broadband connection. By 2020, that fell to slightly below 19%. So that is the good news. Now, there are some wrinkles and frankly some bad trends that are illustrated in the change. So while more households have a broadband internet connection, that growth has been almost entirely driven by cell phone users. So if you look at this information, it illustrates there are gaps in the city when you start breaking things down by age, by household income. You can see that those are huge predicators of who has broadband and who does not. In addition, education has a huge dramatic effect. Race and ethnicity do as well, but it's clear that there's a wide range of factors at work in looking at the pattern of who has broadband access and who does not. By 2019, only 61% of low-income households had a broadband internet connection, compared to almost 94% of households that earn more than $75,000 annually. So while that might be intuitive, it's important to have the objective data guiding our analysis of who in the city needs access to broadband services. In terms of the latest data on broadband access, this shows data from our Worcester Almanac, which was just released about a month ago. It shows 83% of city households have broadband access, while 16.4% of households lack internet subscriptions. That is almost 12,000 households. And then 5.3% with a computer lack internet subscriptions at all. That's almost 10,000 individuals. And satellite is frequently held up as a potential item here, but only 2% of the city uses satellite service for access. We do have data thanks to Worcester Public Schools, former Superintendent Benenda and Sarah Creases from Worcester Public Schools. This is a little dated because it's from March, but it's important to note that the schools in the city have had to embark on significant efforts to connect students, particularly during the era of remote learning. In March of 2021, 8,500 students did not have broadband internet service at home, which was 34% of all Worcester Public School students. And if you look at the factors here, the exact reasons are unknown. However, it could be outstanding bills and balance, a lack of infrastructure connecting to a multifamily unit, or other complications relating to rental properties and ownership. So the city and school department in particular embarked on a multi-year effort to conduct outreach on the new Affordable Connectivity Program, which provides $30 monthly subsidies. I want to thank Sarah and the Worcester Public Schools. They did a tremendous job on the outreach on this. This is an example of some of the outreach material. And this is information from their partners on the national level, Education Superhighway. So I want to thank Aaron Royal. You can see here, before the campaign kicked off, our adoption rate in the city was 26%. As of the end of August, it moved to 47%, one of the highest in the state, and well above the national adoption rate of 25%. So that's due to the very hard work of the Worcester Public Schools and a lot of committed community activists. Now, in terms of the breakdown, we can provide it here by zip code. You can see the city, its enrollment by zip code is up to 20,000 families by the end of September, with two zip codes in particular at the high end, 01605 and 01610. So we do make this information available on an ongoing basis to help inform community activists looking to encourage enrollment. In terms of ARPA funding, the state has created a $50 million fund. I am not going to attempt to speak to that because we're going to hear from Undersecretary Stolba and Michael Baldino on that shortly. There are additional funds from ARPA available on the state level. However, press reports have today that the state's economic development bill is moving within the legislature, so there might be news to come in the next 24 hours or so on other potential uses of these funds. And the city had set aside almost $6 million for use in technology improvements within their ARPA allocation. In addition, the Federal Infrastructure Act has considerable funding, which again, we're going to hear from state speakers on that, so I don't want to steal their thunder, but you can see from a number standpoint, $65 billion will be available for broadband access on the national level. And there are a number of access points here for states to work with municipalities and regions. And we're joined today by Central Mass Regional Planning, who's in the audience as well. Now, the focus is also an ongoing one within the legislature. Our delegation is very involved in this, but there's been a number of reports within the legislature calling for digital equity as a major priority. So the Massachusetts state responses are being led by the Tech Collaborative's Massachusetts Broadband Institute. There's several items here I'll let Michael speak to, including releasing a statewide strategic plan, coordinating Mass Internet Connect, which is an effort with Mass Hire, and we're joined in the audience by Jeff Turgeon today. And they had provided, as of September, 421 individuals with Chromebooks, 147 individuals with digital literacy, so they're very actively addressing this issue as well. Mass Tech Collaborative and MBI are overseeing the development of a statewide broadband coverage map. They're receiving federal capital projects funding, and they're beginning the process of overseeing the development of a digital equity plan and 5-year action plan. So I'm proud today to turn it over to Undersecretary Stolba and Michael. I do want to single out, however, while I'm the face of the Bureau for this purpose, I want to thank my colleagues, Eric Nealon, Josh Boucher, and David Cruz, who are watching as well, and they do tremendous work advancing all these issues on behalf of the community. So thank you very much, and I'm looking forward to hearing from Ashley and Michael. So on that note, I'm happy to turn it over to you guys.
Great, thank you so much. I think Michael is going to pull up the deck, if that's okay with you, Paul. Perfect. I think it's going into presenter mode, but I can't quite see. Well, I can go and ahead and get started if that's okay.
Absolutely.
Does that work? Okay, I'll just go ahead if this mode is okay. So thank you, Paul, and thank you to the Bureau. You guys do such amazing work. And I have to say, your ACP numbers are amazing and your adoption rate is amazing. So I really do appreciate all the attention that you've paid to all of this. We rely on the work that you do. So it's wonderful to see all of your robust reports, and just a huge thank you to you for all of the work. I know that there's a lot of community leaders and elected officials in our state and federal delegation. I can't see all of you, but I know that a lot of you registered. I do just want to thank you. The work that we do in broadband is a huge collaborative effort among our state leaders and our delegation on the federal and state level, and of course at the community level as well. So we really are just so grateful for your support. And we can go into the next slide, Michael, if that's. Are you able to advance?
Oh, can you not see my, I did advance it, you didn't?
I can only see the first slide.
Huh. Let me try and figure out why you're not seeing the second slide.
Okay.
Because I'm seeing it on my screen.
Paul warned us that there was probably going to be some issue on our end.
Are you still seeing the first slide?
Yes.
Huh.
So if you think, I think you go down to presenter mode.
Let me try and I'm going to end the show. I'm going to go back in and do this again.
Okay.
Okay. So I'm going to stop sharing. Let's try this one more time. Sorry for the technical difficulties here.
You know, these things are expected, especially when we're talking about broadband. The irony is just
It is
too good.
always the case.
Too good.
So
If you go back to the, could you go back to the, maybe even just the second slide?
yes, bear with me for just. Okay, let's see how this works this time.
Okay.
Are you seeing it move through now or?
I see the first slide.
Oh. I am not sure why it is not moving. It is moving on my screen, but is not. But no one, you don't see it moving.
No, I don't.
Oh, I can. Yep, I'm just paging through, and it's moving.
Michael, I just made you a co-host in case that assists in your efforts.
Okay.
Let's see.
Okay, let us try this one more time. Now that I'm co-host, let's give
And
this
if
one
not,
more
I think
shot.
I could actually share the slides.
Yes, I'm not sure why this is happening. Let's give it one more shot. Share screen. Appreciate everyone's patience.
Yep.
Okay. Are you seeing any movement now?
Why don't you go to the next slide? On slide 2.
Okay, so you're still
No.
not seeing it move.
Maybe let me see if I can do it.
Okay, my apologies. I'm
That's
not sure
okay.
why
I don't
it's
know.
not.
We're just, we're just gonna see. Let me
Well,
see.
while Ashley and Michael sort out the technical issues, I should give them a formal introduction, which is Ashley is the Undersecretary of Commonwealth Development in the Executive Office of Housing and Economic Development. So she is the key leader to encourage growth and vitality in cities and towns and foster economic opportunities for residents. She leads the team managing numerous community grant programs, and she has extensive experience within land development and public policy beforehand, and is, like me, a former legislative staffer. So
That's right.
thank you. And Michael is the Director and General Counsel of the Broadband Institute of the Mass Tech Collaborative. He was named in the role in April 2019. However, he previously served in their legal department for over 23 years. So he's been involved in MDI's mission since it was first conceived in 2008. So on that note, happy to hopefully turn it over to you guys.
All right. Can you see my screen now?
Yes.
Yeah.
You can see an agenda. Okay, we're rock and rolling. Okay. So here's just a brief agenda of what we're doing. I am working on 2 screens, so I promise I'm looking at you. So I will go through just very quickly kind of the pillars and how we think about broadband and internet. I do want to get into just a tiny bit of where we are now and the work we've done the past 8 years, and then I'll turn over to Michael to go through all the different funding sources and some of our plans that we're already engaging in and that we plan to do in the future. And then, of course, we'll open it up to any questions that you may have. So this is kind of how we think about broadband. I think a lot of you know that broadband has been a key priority for the Baker-Polito administration for the past 8 years. We've primarily been focused on setting up broadband infrastructure in rural towns in central and western Massachusetts. We identified 53 last mile towns that we've been working to connect to broadband infrastructure. I'm happy to report that that work is almost done. It's exciting, it's amazing, it's wonderful. We'll have all of our 53 towns completely operational, all but one, by the end of this year. So we are very excited about all of the work that we've done in that space. That being said, the pandemic taught us a lot. And again, Paul, thank you for your reports. But there's other reports that we've been focused on as well. It showed us that although we have adequate broadband infrastructure, we are lacking in terms of adoption and making sure that people have devices and know that they're affordable devices and know that there are affordable plans. So we've really kind of shifted our focus to this whole new area of digital equity in terms of adoption and affordability and digital literacy. And we're doing that through partnerships. Michael will talk a little bit more about that. But we really want to take an approach where we're focused on partnerships so we can do things at the local level. So we included this slide just to kind of to show you. I love these slides, these pictures of the poles. As I said, we've been hyper focused on getting our 53 last mile towns connected, which we are close to doing. The picture on the right, I think some of you may have actually been at this celebration in Holyoke, where we celebrated the completion of the make ready work. The make ready work, as some of you may know, is the actual poles. So 40,000 poles that we installed in Western and rural Massachusetts to complete the 53 last mile towns. But that work is done. But as I said, we've made a lot of strides in broadband infrastructure. We're highly ranked in terrestrial broadband. I think we're tied for #1. But that being said, we know there's a lot of work to do. So here is just kind of an overview. And again, Michael will go into the details on all of this. But in terms of infrastructure, what we've been really focused on is now that we know that we have our 53 last mile towns built out, we now want to move forward and identify the pockets that exist all throughout the state. This is a statewide issue, and it's certainly not limited just to Western and Central Massachusetts. So we have engaged in a statewide mapping effort, which again, Michael will talk about a little bit, but that will help us take a real data-driven approach as we expect all of this federal money to come down the pike. We also hope to use the Capital Projects Fund money to actually invest in building up the last mile effort that we had to invest in pockets all across the Commonwealth. In terms of digital equity, again, huge thanks to the legislature for helping us create this $50 million fund that is limited to digital equity initiatives. The money can't be used for infrastructure investments, but we are already launching a lot of those programs to start spending this $50 million. And this is building off the $9.2 million that we used through the Partnerships for Recovery Plan about a year or two ago, which I know, Paul, you mentioned. And then for the Digital Equity Act and BEAD, we're still waiting to see how much money we're receiving from those funds, but we do expect to see at least $300 million coming for broadband coming into Massachusetts. So I think I will now kick it over to Michael. We're going to have to do this little dance while I advance your slides, but to go on through some of these details.
Oh, thank you, Ashley, and thank you for rescuing me on my technical difficulties this afternoon. We'll start. So with that kind of overview in mind, I'll start off with under the bipartisan infrastructure law, a big activity, a central activity for us in the coming year is going to be, there are two main components, the Digital Equity Act and then the BEAD program, which is the infrastructure program. And both programs require the development of statewide plans. We have to do a statewide digital equity plan, as well as a 5-year action plan for BEAD that will lay out the vision for infrastructure. One of the key components of the process will be robust stakeholder engagement. I cannot emphasize enough how much we want to ensure that all the stakeholder voices are heard, participate, their needs are identified, and we address those in both plans. And so there are the federal guidelines do specify specific covered populations that need to be identified and addressed in those plans. Those are listed on the right-hand side of the slide. We're establishing a working group that's also going to have membership to represent all of these groups. And as well as that, we want to make sure we kind of build in all the entities that are going to be kind of stakeholders and conduits to achieving our vision of digital equity and universal access. So that includes like public housing, workforce groups, libraries, healthcare, including community health centers. Community-based organizations are going to be critical, and educational institutions. Next slide, Ashley. So Paul actually went into a lot of detail on the Affordable Connectivity Program. So I'm not going to kind of rehash the ACP. One thing I do want to mention is that this has been a key focus area for MBI in kind of some of the pilot programs that we've been launching and supporting with the $9.2 million that we received from the administration to do some digital equity work before this other funding was appropriated. And one of the things we've been doing is working on driving ACP enrollment. So right now, nationwide, the adoption rate, enrollment rate for ACP is 25%. So only 25% of eligible households are actually taking advantage of this program. We want to do something. We're committed to drive up those enrollment rates. So what we've learned is that takes a number of different avenues, but ultimately you need to get it's raising awareness, and that needs to be done through trusted community-based organizations. In addition to having the providers get the word out, in addition to having, MBI and other entities get the word out, you need to have trusted community-based organizations get the word out to the underserved populations that they represent and that they serve, and on a daily basis. And in many cases, you really need to provide one-on-one support to help people enroll. It's not an easy enrollment process, particularly if you have digital literacy challenges. You have to identify how you are eligible and submit appropriate paperwork. So we've been supporting kind of pilot projects to actually do that work at the community-based level to help one-on-one support to get people enrolled. Next slide, Ashley. So as both Paul and Ashley have noted, we are leading a statewide mapping process. The real importance of this is that we want to ensure that the federal maps are as accurate as possible. There's been a lot of commentary over the years about kind of the deficiencies in the federal mapping process. The FCC is now moving away from census block-based coverage information to address level coverage information. What we're doing is we want to ensure those FCC maps at the address level are as accurate as possible, because this will tie into ultimately how much funding that the Commonwealth of Massachusetts will receive through the BEAD program. So we'll be launching our maps later this month. I think everyone recognizes this is going to be an iterative process. We've gotten really terrific participation voluntarily from the providers in the state to provide their coverage information. We're going to have an online portal that's going to be open to the public for people to view the coverage information and provide feedback to us, as well as we'll have a link to the FCC for the challenge process that they are going to be running for broadband availability. That process has not started yet, but we also already actively engaged in ensuring that all broadband serviceable locations are accurately represented on the federal maps. So, for example, just within the past week, we've submitted corrections to the federal, what they call the fabric, which is all the addresses in the state that can receive broadband. We've identified over 1,300 locations in 6 counties that are not on the federal maps, that are on our list of our statewide address list. We're still going through that, and we're going to continue to submit additional challenges, but that's all part of the process of what we're doing at the state level, again, to ensure that these maps are as accurate as possible. Next slide, Ashley. So turning to kind of what we really want to focus in on today. So digital equity. So we really like the National Digital Inclusion Alliance's definition of digital equity, which is digital equity is a condition in which all individuals and communities have the information technology capacity needed for full participation in our society, democracy, and economy. Digital equity is necessary for civic and cultural participation, employment, lifelong learning, and access to essential services. And next slide, please. So the kind of legs of the stool of digital equity are ensuring everyone, there's three legs of the stool, ensuring everyone has fast, affordable, reliable access to broadband service, making sure everyone has a device to access the internet. And as part of that, it's really important that that people do not, that families where they have school-age children, that they're getting a device, that the child is getting a device for educational purposes. We don't want adults using those devices. We want to make sure every family has sufficient number of devices to meet that family's needs. And finally, digital literacy, and that includes the entire spectrum of basic, tasks like how do you establish an email account, how do you access the internet, to more detailed kind of use case specific digital literacy functions, like how do you apply for jobs online would be an example of kind of like helping people get back into the workforce. And we also want to make sure that everyone has appropriate education awareness around cybersecurity and that they can access the internet safely. Next slide, please. So as we've mentioned, digital equity and achieving digital inclusion really cuts across every aspect of society, whether it's social connectivity, being able to get into the workforce and stay in the workforce, civic participation, healthcare access, both kind of like as we increasingly move toward telehealth and remote patient monitoring, educational opportunities, not just at the student level, but ensuring that parents have the skills and the capacity to effectively participate in their children's education, and obviously ensuring financial resources. Next slide, please. So this is just a kind of like a smattering of kind of some of the statistics that demonstrate how important digital equity is and how it kind of cuts through every aspect of society. On the job side, we've seen this play out with our Mass Internet Connect program, which Paul alluded to. So that's a program that we established with the support of the administration and in cooperation with the Executive Office of Labor and Workforce Development. We have all of the Mass Hire One-Stop Career Centers participating in a program to address the technology barriers of unemployed job seekers. And through that program, we've helped to provide internet access, devices, as well as access to digital literacy resources. And I think Paul noted some of these stats. Just in Central Mass alone, through the 2 career centers, we've helped over 750 people get Chromebooks free, as well as over around 170 referrals for digital literacy resources. And one of the things we found out through that, for example, is a lot of people rely, particularly at the low income levels, rely on their cell phone as their primary source of access to the internet. And it is very difficult to do a job search and prepare a resume, submit application. This process almost entirely exists online. That's very difficult to do with a smartphone. You need to have a computer. You need to have a laptop or a Chromebook. So we've seen how much that has fundamentally changed the ability of people to get back into the workforce by having access to those resources. As I mentioned before, if you look at just like, having parents be able to participate in their children's education, it's some great research out of Mass Inc. For example, nearly 1/4 of Gateway City parents have difficulty using the computer systems required for remote learning. And also, residents of Gateway Cities are twice as likely to not use email, which is a measure of basic digital literacy. So again, this goes toward how parents can participate in their children's education. And obviously, I'll also touch briefly on small business owners. If you don't have proper internet access, then you can't have a web presence for your business. You can't process credit card transactions. These are fundamental metrics for having a successful business. Next slide, please. So one of the things we're really here to discuss today, and we're really excited about, is under the leadership of the Baker-Polito administration and the state legislature, $50 million was authorized late last year. This is ARPA funding under the Coronavirus State and Local Fiscal Recovery Funds, $50 million purely for digital equity activities and projects and programs. So under the ARPA rules, this funding has to be fully committed by the end of 2024 and fully expended by the end of 2026. MBI is managing these funds through a contract with the Commonwealth, and we launched 2 new programs, which I will discuss in more detail. We launched those programs in September. Next slide, please. So first program, Digital Equity Partnerships Program. This is a program where we've identified 6 initiative areas listed on the right-hand side of the screen, where we're seeking 10 to 15 high-capacity organizations to implement these initiatives on our behalf across the state. And so these partners will kind of have fiduciary programmatic technical responsibility for executing and implementing these programs, utilizing our grant funding, and getting these funds down to the community-based organizations that can deliver the services to kind of like low-income households, communities of color, and other kind of underrepresented, populations. So what we want to do is this program really builds off of the 3, our strategic pillars and the aspects of digital equity that we want to advance. So these 6 programs are, we're going to be promoting digital literacy, public space internet modernization. An example of that would be investments in libraries to enhance their Wi-Fi infrastructure to meet the capacity and needs of their community residents who utilize libraries for internet access, device distribution, both new devices as well as refurbishing existing devices and getting, again, into the hands of target populations, Wi-Fi access. We've got a particular focus on bringing free Wi-Fi to public housing residents in the Commonwealth, and also supporting mesh Wi-Fi networks. We have been piloting some of these projects with our partners, the MACP, as well as the Essex County Community Foundation. Connectivity for economic hardship. This is focusing on primarily families in transition, coming out of homeless shelters. They may not be ready for a home-based wireline broadband subscription, but we can give them a cellular hotspot as a bridge until they find permanent, stable housing, and as well as a Chromebook in order to, get them back and get settled. And lastly, education outreach and engagement kind of cuts through all these initiatives. And as I mentioned before, one of the critical areas of this is, is engagement around the Affordable Connectivity Program. Next slide, please. So our other program that we launched is in September is a Municipal Digital Equity Planning Program. And so this is open to all communities in the Commonwealth. We're in the process of bringing in a stable of contractors that can provide free digital equity planning services to communities. We're going to have an online application that's going to open later this month, so communities can start raising their hand, coming in and saying, we want to do a digital equity plan. And this program is going to be flexible enough that we want to meet communities where they are. We recognize not every community is different. They have different needs, different stakeholders. And so we're giving 2 options, which then we can kind of like mold to the needs of the community. So one is a charrette model, which is a shorter term kind of digital equity planning process that will, again, help to identify the stakeholders, what their needs are, and generates, some deliverables that will provide kind of a roadmap going forward. Or communities can do a more extensive digital equity planning process. That'll be a multi-month process. And also communities can graduate from one to the other. They can start with a charrette and then go and then apply for a more detailed planning process. And so we really want to make sure that communities are active participants, municipalities are active participants in the digital equity planning process. We really urge you to sign up early because and get plans moving, because we want to have those plans feed up into our statewide plans that we'll be developing next year. And we want municipalities to be full partners in that process. And so this will help municipal decision making around kind of how you invest your own resources, as well as making sure that you inform how the state invests its resources around supporting digital equity. And again, there's going to be additional digital equity funding coming through the form of capacity grants under the bipartisan infrastructure law, and we want to make sure municipalities are prepared to effectively access those funds as well when those were available to be administered. And that will probably kick, we believe probably late 2023 or into 2024. Next slide, please. So we'll wrap there, and we'll turn it back to Paul to moderate the Q&A.
Thanks very much, Michael. And it should be noted, Ashley, thank you for making that happen and seamlessly making the presentation go smoothly. So first, I do want to circle back, and I know we have one question in the Q&A thus far, but I want to indicate all attendees, please absolutely feel free to put a question in the Q&A. I can't guarantee I'll get to it, but one question to ask right off is, as I mentioned at the beginning of this, the legislature put out notice earlier today that they were advancing their economic development bill, which got held up in negotiations between the House and Senate. And Ashley, I hope you might have some insights on that and maybe some good news given the scale of everything today.
Yes, and I was multitasking a little bit and kind of going through it on my other screen. I'm very excited that there's an economic development bill. A lot of the things that we work on in the Executive Office of Housing and Economic Development, and especially things that I oversee, are in the economic development bill. So I'm very happy to see that. But in terms of broadband, it does look like there will be 75 million across two items for broadband. 25 million would be for broadband infrastructure, and 50 million would be for broadband and internet access with Broadband Innovation Fund. So Michael, I know you're hearing this for the first time right now, so I think we're saying, oh my gosh, more work. But this is such amazing news, and we really are so grateful that this was included in the economic development bill.
That's incredibly exciting. So glad that we can collectively celebrate that all together here right now.
In a couple thoughts for those of you in attendance maybe less familiar with the legislative process, this was not engineered by Michael, Ashley, and myself. As a matter of fact, the timing is completely fortuitous. It has been progressing for some time, and I really want to commend the Baker-Polino administration has made broadband access funding and digital equity funding a key component in all their proposals in economic development. And in this case, it got held up due to a procedural issue and outside negotiations between the branches. But this is terrific news in the sense of it demonstrates that it's bipartisan, it cuts across institutional boundaries in state government, and it's going to continue to fuel attention to this beyond these existing programs in the next wave. So the Broadband Innovation Fund is going to receive this new infusion as well. So I really want to commend Ashley, Michael, the Baker-Polino administration, and there were a number of legislative staffers who registered for this, and our delegation for seeing the wisdom in making that an ongoing priority. In terms of the Q&A, we have an anonymous attendee, not very helpful when I ask you to identify yourself, but asking about efforts in Central Mass. So let me say a couple things on that note, right? One is the Bureau is regional in scope. Given the importance of this effort in a gateway city, we have been tracking the zip codes in Worcester proper. Those of you in other communities, that zip code information is available for all communities. That's not limited. So we kept it focused on Worcester for that reason. However, that zip code information is indeed available. I will point out these funds are not limited only to gateway cities. The state emphasis on this has cut rural, suburban, and urban. It's not a gateway city only initiative. And I will add, Michael and the Broadband Initiative have been working for much of my professional career on broadband access in rural communities in Western Massachusetts. So that's a longstanding focus. We also are joined today by Central Mass Regional Planning, and I know that they're looking at this as a potential action item. I know MAPC, their colleagues in the Boston area, were able to play a critical role earlier. The other question that I see here from Matthew Gorski is asking about CBOs. that will help route the funds. I believe they're referring to maybe community building organizations, maybe. I, I don't know if the funds are going to be routed by CBOs. I mean, my understanding, Michael, you might want to speak to the role municipal government's playing here, and I want to applaud the overt and very focused input mechanism for municipalities, and that's tremendously helpful to really make sure the community is well represented. And it's defined as community-based organizations, according to that.
So Paul, I'd be happy to take it to address that. So this falls under our Digital Equity Partnership Program, and again, this is the partnership model that also Ashley discussed and I discussed earlier. You know, that's the model that we've been piloting and that we found to be most successful is, you know, to reach kind of regional partners or partners that represent a particular vertical. For example, it could be community health organizations, could be libraries, but have them be kind of like our sub-awardee who administer funds on our behalf, and then help identify projects within specific initiatives and get those funds where necessary to the community-based organizations and help support those community-based organizations to deliver services to the populations in need. And again, so we've piloted that successfully with MAPC and Essex County Community Foundation. And, you know, I can just give a really quick example of, you know, of how that's worked. So with MAPC, they helped be the conduit to work directly with public housing, you know, agencies in their footprint, and to be our boots on the ground to develop pilots to bring free Wi-Fi access to housing projects in Revere and Everett. And those projects are going to be launching relatively soon. But they're the entity that helps to provide that connective tissue to help get the money funneled down to the local organizations. And same thing, you know, Essex, for example, we just launched recently a municipal mesh Wi-Fi network in the Point neighborhood in Salem. Essex County Community Foundation was our partner, and they helped support working with the North Shore CDC to get this project scoped, designed, and implemented. And, you know, and so we think that is the most successful model. And I'll put a plug in. The MBI website is broadband.masstech.org. Go to our website, you know, learn more about these programs and what we want to have. We just had our first round of concept papers for the partnerships program. We're going to have quarterly solicitation rounds going forward. We want to make sure every area of the state is fully covered by these, you know, with partners to implement all these programs. So, you know, I urge everyone to get the word out, and we want to keep getting those partnership proposals coming in the months ahead.
And for those of you who do not know, I think it's a relevant point to note in terms of the commitment outside the city of Boston. Mass Tech Collaborative's historical headquarters is in Westboro. So they are, as point in fact, nearby neighbors to the city of Worcester. And as I said, they've had a longstanding commitment to rural broadband access. But this latest infusion of funding will undoubtedly assist things. There's two remaining questions that I don't think can be dealt with in a comprehensive way. I think they're a little off target, but just to maybe share. One is Roberto Diaz from Worcester Interfaith was asking about the limitations of Chromebooks, which, to be clear, the school department has embarked on providing Chromebooks to students. And so that's a fair point, Roberto, but it's not really one that I suspect MTC or EOHED are really in a position of addressing. However, I can speak to the fact that from a sheer volume standpoint of providing internet access, the numbers are such that you can buy a lot more Chromebooks for the same amount of money than full laptops. So that's why most school systems do employ Chromebooks, and that might have some reason to do with why I bought my teenage daughter a Chromebook, as a matter of fact. But the other question that's here is from Mass Live, who's one of the reporters on the call, asking, if either of you could speak to how broadband access in Worcester compares to other gateway cities. And I know, Ashley, you were very impressed by the numbers we have on enrollment in the Affordable Connectivity Program. But if you have either of you have reactions, that'd be helpful.
I don't have that data readily available at my fingertips, although I was very impressed with your statistics. I don't know if, Michael, you have any of those statistics.
So I think Paul, some of the statistics that you pulled in, from the American Community Survey, data, is helpful. As I said, we, on the issue of kind of, determining exactly how many households in the state are either unserved or underserved, that's something that will get greater clarity on going forward, with both our mapping process and the federal mapping process. And so, on the connectivity side, we'll be getting much better data that has ever been available before. And so, and as I said, I think Paul, we all use a lot of the same data sources in terms of kind of understanding kind of the digital equity work. And I do, on Gateway Cities, Mass Inc., has been one of the leading sources of providing data on kind of the situation, kind of how gateway cities compare to each other.
That's an excellent point. And Kieran, I'll be sure to send you a Mass Inc. report that came out a few months ago. I am not forwarding it to you solely because they singled out a sidebar to the city of Worcester and commended Worcester, and particularly the Bureau, actually, for our work highlighting broadband. It's not as self-serving as it sounds. To Michael's point, their report does put in context with some other gateway cities. So in light of the time, I apologize to everyone else that we're going to move to my friend and colleague, Jonathan Cohen, who's the Vice President of Programs and Strategy for the Greater Worcester Community Foundation, and has been a critical player in these conversations on a community-based effort within the city of Worcester and the entire county. Thank you, Jonathan.
Thank you, Paul. Don't bail yet, people. 39 people are going to hang until the end. First of all, excellent, informative presentation. Thanks to Ashley and Michael for sharing with us, and for Paul for queuing it up and giving us the local data. Second, Greater Worcester Community Foundation through the Worcester Together Fund was pleased to support the work of the Research Bureau in paying attention to broadband and staying on the topic, because this is a critical issue for the future of the county, future of the city, future of the community in terms of on so many fronts, as Paul mentioned at the beginning: education, workforce, healthcare, civic engagement, prayer. It's all in there, and we need to make sure that people are connected. So all of this is great and important, and all for naught if we don't collectively figure out a way to bring these funds to Worcester County. And so that's a challenge for all of us, is to identify who can be the lead partners and who can be the collaborative partners in applying for these grant opportunities and bringing this money into the community. And we at the foundation will do whatever we can as a connector and convener to try and help in that quest to do that. But it's on us here in the county to seek out these funding opportunities and to organize the communities and to get our municipalities on board. And to do that really is not rushing, but as fast as we can while this money is still available. So we all have a charge today, and I'm glad that I was here to get all this information as well. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Jonathan. I do want to thank everyone who tuned in today and who's going to be viewing this online later. And I want to thank Ashley and Michael, and particularly Ashley, for solving our technical difficulty today. But I want to thank both of you, and your institutions are critical to responding to digital equity needs. And I really can't thank you both enough for all you're doing on that front. There are a lot of people involved in today's event who are involved on a community-based effort, and I think we all recognize the state's not going to solve this alone, municipal government's not going to solve it alone, community-based groups and the private sector are not going to solve it alone. We all have to work together. So the Bureau's been proud to continue informing and leading this conversation, and I really want to thank everyone today for your attention and support.
Paul, thank you again. I think on behalf of Ashley and myself, thank you for convening this today. And if we can leave one message, again, and echoing your point, we have an opportunity to meet this moment, and this is a once in a generation opportunity to really enact transformational change to close the digital divide. And everyone has a role to play. I think everyone, so don't underestimate, you all have roles to play. And we look forward to working with you to achieve this vision.
Thanks very much. We look forward to working with everyone. And thanks. And you can check this out on our website. Take care, everyone.
Bye. Thank you so much.